everyone, my name is Sally and welcome back to my channel. Today I'll be recommending and giving a review for this series, Our Dreams at Dusk by Yuhki Kamatani. This manga series delves into lots of triggering themes, which I'll have here on the screen. Viewer discretion is advised. Okay, so like I said, this manga is by Yuhki Kamatani, and there are currently 4 volumes. My initial thought for this series is the art is just really beautiful. The facial expressions for each character is drawn in a way that you can actually feel the emotions that they're going through in each panel and each chapter. So it's really wonderfully done. I especially adore the way the author creates the mystery behind someone's son and really brings their character together in a way that I feel is a good representation of a non-binary asexual person. So before I start, please like, subscribe, and now we'll be going into detail for each volume, so let's go. So in the first volume, we meet our main protagonist, Sasasuke Kaname, and their struggle with their sexual identity and the fear of being outed in high school. And we are introduced to our MC Sasasuke and his eternal struggle with trying to keep his identity hidden during his last years of high school. Unfortunately, before the summer vacation started, I guess you could say his secret is out, and his facial expressions throughout the first volume and just the pain and the embarrassment and fear of being found out when he himself doesn't understand what he likes acceptable is very heartbreaking. And in his internal struggle, he meets someone's son at a bridge where he was going to commit. And in that interaction with someone's son tells them, "You can tell me anything, but I won't listen." And he comes to talk about his issues and how he doesn't feel that it's fair that everyone's going to judge him just because he thinks he's gay. And the whole dynamic between someone's son and Sasasuke is just very natural, very real, and I feel like the conversation from the start to finish and just the location really wrapped up how I would feel a teenager going through this would come to terms with their sexual identity. And in the end of volume 1, we meet the other main characters at the drop-in center, which is a place that someone's son has established for anyone and everyone, no matter what you identify as, can feel comfortable in being in a space where you can be yourself. In particular, really knows how to make you feel what the characters are feeling. For instance, in this section here where Sasasuke meets someone's son, I've never seen such beautiful landscape work in terms of illustrations in mangas. So in volume 2, we learn more about the other patrons of the drop-in center, especially on Misora, who is the 6th grader who likes to dress in cute clothing such as dresses and wear wigs. And at first, when Sasasuke meets Misora, he didn't realize that the little girl, or rather the high school girl that he thought was at the drop-in center, was Misora the whole time. And he's perplexed because he doesn't know if Misora wants themselves wants to be a boy, a girl, or just a person who likes to dress in cute clothing, which there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, they're just a 6th grader and they like cute clothing, and I feel that with clothing it's been very politicized and assigning genders, and whether this is female clothing, this is male clothing, and just clothing is just clothing. So Misora's struggle in trying to determine whether they want to be a boy or maybe they just like wearing girl clothes is quite different in terms of shown in a manga like this. And Tasasku, trying to be, say, as an ally to Misora, invites them out to the summer festival, and during that festival, everyone, especially Tasasku, encouraged Misora, and everything's going well until Misora is unfortunately groped in public. Shocked and scared, understandably, Misora pulls for Tasasku for comfort and for reassurance, but instead is given one of the most horrible things you can say to a victim. Has experienced that and says it was because you were cute. This causes a huge rift between Misora and Tasasku, and this ends up with Misora shouting all types of slurs at Tasasku. And in that whole debacle, Tasasu's crush, Tomakun, overhears this, and his secret is out. Tasasku now knows that Tomakun knows that he's gay. And from there on, Misora no longer visits the drop-in center. Throughout this whole second volume, it was a lot of discussion on gender identity and gender appearance, and with Tasasku also struggling to figure out come to understand who he is. There's lots of misunderstandings and lots of miscommunication that occurs between the two. And though it's unfortunate, this is majority of the time happens when an ally doesn't really understand what the person in question is going through and tries to put their emotions and their thoughts and push it on top of the person, and sometimes it just doesn't work that way. And it's always best to just discuss and just have a conversation and understand the person's point of view, especially when it comes to gender identity and things like that nature. Jump into volume 3, which personally is the most painful volume out of all 4 volumes of the series. So in volume 3, this is where every phobia against the LGBTQ plus community just decides to run rampant. And it is so sad to see, but this manga and the author does such a good job on showing realistic or somewhat realistic portrayals of what people of the community go through in day-to-day life, and it's a lot to take in. So after the whole aftermath between Misora and Tasasku during the summer festival, it's now the spring term, it's a new school term, and Misora stopped going to the drop-in center, and Tasasku is just wondering, where did he go wrong? Tasasku doesn't even have time to process his feelings or his emotions and actions towards Misora, because Tomakun, his crush, ends up at a workshop organized by the cat Clutter. So during the workshop, Tasasco and Tomokyun are interacting pretty normally, I would say, especially with the whole issue of does Tomokyun know if Tasasco is gay or not, and all that, since they were both at the summer festival. But things go really bad when Oyasama-san, which is an old acquaintance to Otsumi, recognizes Otsumi but refers to him by his dead name. So Otsumi is one of the characters who has the appearance and gender identity of a man. However, he is a trans man, and with that comes lots of stigma, especially from Oyasama-san, who is an old high school classmate of Otsumi. Because Oyasama-san insists on using Otsumi's dead name, it causes lots of tension at the workshop, especially with everyone from Cat Clutter, and it goes even worse by Oyasama-san outing Tasasco in front of Tomokon, assuming because he's working at Cat Clutter, he's also gay. It gets really bad when Oyasama-san pushes for Otsumi-kun to do a girls' meetup with their old classmates. And these dynamics, not wanting to be understood by everyone and being perfectly fine with that thought, is how Otsumi-san feels during the whole interaction at the girls' meetup. This is a good example of how allyship within the LGBTQ plus community is usually a slippery slope, as it can come off as performative instead of a genuine care for those in the community, and you end up hurting a lot of people when you do these things. So it's always best to sit back and let those in the community explain how you as an ally can help. So we then switch back to Tasasco, who, through the conflict of Otsumi-san and the whole projection of Oyasama saying you need to be understood, that's how everyone will accept you, makes him realize how he hurt Misora-san during the festival. But he gets a rude awakening when Tomokun starts saying slurs and just lots of homophobic commentary about the patrons at the drop-in center, and he starts to distance himself from Tasasco. Tomokun is an interesting character, to say the least. The author did somewhat of a realistic approach of how eternal homophobia can literally show how ugly a person can be. When Tomokun is approached by someone's son and said, "You can say anything, but I won't listen," his internal conflict is literally thrown at him when someone says, "So what are you? A man, a woman, gay?" Leads to Tasasco coming out, saying that he's gay and he has feelings for Tomokun. He decides to confess his feelings and come out because he doesn't want Tomokun to continue this vicious cycle of hurting the people that Tasasco cares about. He doesn't need his apology nor his understanding. He just wants him to realize that these words can cause more harm than good. Now we're in volume 4, and here we get more into detail between the other adults at the drop-in center and Isaki-chan and Haru-chan's preps in finalizing their wedding at the Triangle House. Getting to that point was rocky and a bit traumatic and inducing, to say the least. Saki, who had not come out to her parents, has her identity outed by Tomokun's father. The revelation and the scenes up to this point were both scary and tense. Towards the end, Saki's parents, mainly her father, comes to understand that his prejudices against his daughter's sexuality was based upon his emotions, the opinions that others would have about his teachings and upbringings, and not on the happiness of his daughter. Preparations are finalized and everyone from the drop-in center are invited, and both Saki-chan and Haru-chan's families are coming to the wedding. Now, here we get more into the sad parts of being in a same-sex relationship, with Chiako's parting with his loved one, with his partner Tsuchiro-san, as he's terminally ill. And during the wedding, Chiako sadly has to leave because Tsuchiro's son calls him saying, "You have to see my father." And Chiako has this whole internal debate whether he wants to go, because he wants to see Tsuchiro-san before he passes, but he doesn't want to ruin Saki's and Haru-chan's day. But at the same time, he's also scared of meeting Tsuchiro-san's son, because during the whole time he was visiting him at the hospital, he would always time when he would be there so he doesn't see Tsuchiro and have an awkward conversation or appearance. And surprisingly enough, someone-san pushed so that Chiako can go to the hospital and see Tsuchiro-san one more time. This scene was the most devastating sets of imagery I have ever seen. It really shows how even in sickness and in health, no matter who the people are, love is love, and it should just be accepted as that. While Chiako was tending to his personal matters, Misora finally comes to see Tasaku at the drop-in center before the wedding, and they patch things up. However, Misora neither accepts nor denies Tasaku's apology, because to them, I don't think I did anything wrong, so I'm totally not saying sorry, which is quite refreshing, because some things just don't have a resolution. And that dynamic between Misora and Tasaku is a good representation of just how humans are. Sometimes saying sorry and accepting apology isn't enough. It's whether you feel comfortable with yourself, and you don't necessarily have to accept apologies from people who have done you wrong. After the wedding, it's a new semester. It's the last year for Tomakun and Tasaku. They will continue their friendship. Personally, I feel like their relationship ends on an open ending, because even though Tasaku has come into terms with his sexuality and his love towards Tomakun, Tomakun doesn't know exactly whether or not he can reciprocate those feelings, not really knowing how he identifies, which is normal because not everything needs a label. It's a bit bittersweet, to say the least, because, you know, the struggle that Tasaku went through confessing and accepting his sexuality, and the treatment that he received from Tomakun. Would expect to see maybe a hint of romance, but it doesn't always have to end that way, and it's quite appropriate in how they just ended this way, I feel, because one character has accepted who they are and has to figure out what they're gonna do moving forward, and the other character still doesn't know where he's gonna go from here on out in terms of his identity and what his preferences are. But either way, he Tomo-kun tells Sasuke-kun not be what Sasuke wants, as in a significant other, just not right now, because he himself doesn't know what he identifies as. That was my review on Our Dreams at Dusk. I would definitely recommend this manga, mainly because of the illustration. I've shown you guys throughout my favorite panels for each volume, but I feel like this manga has done a pretty good representation of the youth, LGBTQ youth community, and how the interactions between they themselves, their community, their peers, and the struggles that they go through, and all of the horrible phobias, both internal and external, and the difficulties of being outed, and just the whole the process of accepting yourself. It was beautifully done. Now, I say all of this, but it doesn't mean that this series is perfect. There are some aspects to it that the author could improve on, but I feel like this is a good step to LGBTQ plus themed mangas and getting them published. And I personally feel like there could have been a 5th volume. I would have loved to see how Tomo-kun and Sasuke, how they move on from high school and what their adult life looks like, but you know, having it as an open ending lets the reader to decide what that could look like. Now, you can purchase the physical copies wherever you buy books. I personally just buy most of my manga from Right Stuff. This is not sponsored, though I wish it was, as it's more of an economical website to just get new mangas and pre-releases. Well, that's all from me. Thank you all for watching, and comment down below what volume or which panel was your favorite from this series, and what other mangas you'd like for me to review. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye!